After a tough few years marked by funding droughts and investor caution, African tech is roaring back, or is it? We'll see. Startups across the continent raised $1.35 billion in the first half of 2025 alone. And for the first time, local investors are outpacing global ones. But perhaps even more telling is a new trend. African companies like Lemfi and Moneypoint are now acquiring foreign startups to scale faster and more strategically. What does this say about the maturity and global ambitions of Africa's innovation economy? What's fueling this resurgence, and what will it take to sustain it? Joining me in the studio is someone at the center of this transformation, Tomiwa Aladekomo, CEO of Big Cabal Media. We'll explore the drivers behind this moment, what's working, what's next, and what it will take to make African tech not just visible, but indispensable on the global stage. Great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you with us on the show. So, I mentioned African tech indispensable on the global stage. It sounds like a very lofty dream, but I'm looking at that 1.5 billion first half of the year figure for tech funding. Is that a sustainable trend? What drove it really?
I think that, as a trend, that's definitely sustainable. I think that it's a drop in the bucket of sort of global investment. It is being driven by sort of more local investors. It's a mix of equity and debt, which is really interesting. And what's great is that we're seeing resurgences in the level of equity investment and in the level of debt investment. It's being driven by some pretty sizable deals. And so I will say that if there's still a place where there's softness, there's still softness in terms of early stage investing, in terms of the volumes of deals, but you are seeing some sort of big mid-sized deals, some sort of pretty sizable raises, and so that raises the overall total. And I think that speaks to sort of the quality of sort of our mid-stage, growth stage sort of startups. We've gone from a place where it used to be everything in our ecosystem was people trying things for the first time. So lots of experimentation, a lot of confidence in the business models. When you look at companies like Moneypoint, Lemfi, you see companies that were started by people who've already been in the ecosystem. They've already built for other people. Or, in the case of Lemfi, you have someone like Ridwan who had worked at Opay, worked at Flutterwave. They're CEOs who are sort of like really, really experienced. You look at Omni Retail, which is one of the fastest growing startups on the continent. And it's on the back of Dipankar having sort of run multiple startups for long years, really deep experience in the ecosystem. Yes. So Dipankar, Dipankar is one of my favorite sort of entrepreneurs, just like he's seen it from the really rough days. But so what you have, you look at Sabi, where it's like, that's, the entire RentSource team's gone over and started something. So it's deep experience. And so they aren't coming with wouldn't it be nice if we tried X. They're coming with really deep knowledge of the market, really deep knowledge of business models, really great operational capacity. And so those startups, when they get to maturity, when they do year 1, 2, 3, then we're going out to raise $30 million. We're going out to raise $50 million. We want to expand, and we understand the markets. We understand how to expand. So we're able to take sort of surer-footed moves and grow. So I think that's where we are as an ecosystem, and that's been really, really good.
That's interesting because I guess the word I wanted to use was the fact that I think the ecosystem is maturing, but perhaps maybe compared to other markets, we still have a bit of a way to go. But here's a trend that I'm really keen on understanding: this rise in local investors. There's no money. What is triggering that, and how does that trend compare in markets like Nigeria compared with elsewhere?
So I think even in that, we're still relatively early. 2020, 21, 22, you had this massive influx of cash from Silicon Valley, zero interest rates on a global basis. And so there was a lot of foreign money looking for where to land. It allowed a lot of our startups to sort of prove their cases, for us to prove that actually there's a market here, we can build interesting things. And then of course, once zero interest rates went away, the foreign capital went away. American money, there's enough happening in America. They are focused on their markets. They're no longer focused on the world. It's America first, so everything is grounded in America now. So that money goes away. Europe, lots happening with Europe. They're trying to keep tabs with America. They have their own internal. And so what it is that you have an ecosystem that's proven that we can build some big companies, we can build some meaningful companies. Moneypoint, is doing volumes that are a significant part of Nigeria's sort of digital flows, rivaling major banks. And so if you're an investor, you're looking at that and you're like, okay, there are real businesses to be built here. And I think that the local money is going to more mature startups.
Yes.
But there's a really important thing, which is you don't want to invest on the headlines of the day.
Okay.
So we need a lot of money going into early stage startups because
That's
the startups you're seeing right now, you're seeing Money Point, Lem5, but you need the startups of next year.
So the question for you, sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
the question about ensuring local investors go into early stage, the Money Points, when they were early stages, was it foreign capital?
It was a lot of foreign capital.
So,
It was a lot of foreign capital in your Lem5s and your Money
local
Points.
investors have to follow that.
They have to follow that trend. So they have to
trajectory.
So it means that they need to be investing in local funds. So something like Ventures Platform, last time they did their raise, I think their first close, last time they raised a fund, their first close was entirely local capital.
Okay.
And so I think that might have been $40 million, which that's local capital going into, and Ventures Platform is early.
Family offices?
A combination, a lot of HNIs. And so our HNIs on the continent are used to investing in energy, investing in real estate. So there are sectors that they are familiar with and they are comfortable with. And what you need is an understanding that these sectors matter. And the money in the future isn't going to be in energy because, globally, we're moving towards renewable. Well, even with America and everything it's doing right now, there's still a big movement towards renewable energy. So maybe that's not where the future money is to be made. The future money is going to be in technology. Applying technology, not just pure tech companies, but also applying technology to SMEs, applying technology to other industries. And so we need to move money into that direction, and it needs to be a lot more focused. We also need a really, really important part of it is pensions. Because we have huge pools of capital sitting down there that, again, are being invested very conservatively, aren't being applied to innovation, aren't chasing the returns of the future. They're chasing the returns they understand today, but there's a lot of money that's going to be made in here. And I think at Tech Cabal, when we cover the industry, when we cover Africa, we say technology is going to be the biggest driver of productivity, of returns over the next decade, by a long shot. And so if you're not following technology, if you're not investing, if you're not placing your money there, then you're chasing the past, not the future.
I really love that soundbite. I feel like you should be sitting in front of the pension funds and the PFAs and the regulators.
Please, they should come and join us.
But here's a fascinating issue I really want to delve in. You had Lemfi acquire Pillar. You had African startups acquiring foreign companies.
That's maturity.
This is like counterintuitive. This is kind of shifting the narrative. What is driving this trend?
So I think it's a couple of things. Africa is 54 separate markets.
Right.
We like to talk about Africa as if it's one big market. It's a really fragmented market. So when you're going into other markets, you need to understand their regulation. You need a leg up. You need local players. So when MoneyPoint acquires a Kenyan bank, and they don't acquire a tiny microfinance bank in one corner,
go for a big,
something that's $23 million in assets or something like that, it means that there's an operational team on ground. They get the license. They get the executives and the expertise in that market. So in order to win in that market, they're starting with a team that can actually operate in that market.
Sure.
I think if you also follow the way Latin American startups grew, this sort of global expansion is necessary. If Nubank, acquired a bunch of assets, which is a Brazilian sort of fintech, really, really huge, acquired a bunch of US startups as it expanded into the US. And so when you start to see us acquire fintechs in Latin America, in the US, we have global ambitions. And we have the capital to be able to pursue them. We have the operational maturity to be able to integrate their businesses into our businesses. So again, it speaks to how much more confident, how sure-footed our startups are, that they're able to make those kind of bold acquisitions.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about it also just shows that, look, when it comes to solving problems and global challenges, there's a phrase I always used to say that it's not African solutions to African problems, it's African solutions to global problems. So from that perspective, actually, why not?
Yeah,
I
know, absolutely. So one thing I say is we have some of the most brilliant entrepreneurs in the world, in Africa. Just because our markets are so tough that building a company here to any size means that you're a serious operator.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the kind of solutions that we have sometimes come ahead of global trends. And so, fintech particularly, we've been very early on a lot of solutions. So they do translate to global problems.
Because we've also had to leapfrog, right?
So we've had leapfrog problems. commerce. There's a lot of stuff that we're doing where the rest of the world will catch up to it. And so if you're early and you've reached a stage of maturity in your operations where you feel like, I've conquered Nigeria, I've conquered Kenya, actually maybe Brazil's the next opportunity, maybe the US is the next opportunity. Something like Move is a really, really interesting business.
Okay, tell us about that. Yeah.
So, Move does asset financing. They're moving into automated cars. They're moving into a range of interesting areas. But their model in Africa is one that's, I think they're now operating on 6 continents in about 19 countries.
Is this a Nigerian homegrown company? Or, yeah.
Nigerian, African, so a couple of investors from across the continents. But yes, Nigerian investors and Nigerian operators kind of primarily driving it. And they've grown across the continents. They've grown across the world. I think they've just crossed unicorn status with their last raise, possibly about $100 million. And so a really important startup in the sense that the model that they've taken is one that the US has looked at and said, actually, why don't we have that? And they've said, yeah, we can bring that to the US. We can partner with Uber and help Uber invent the future of their business.
Okay.
And I think that's really quite significant. So we are capable of innovations that change the way the world does business, not just the way Africans do business.
Yeah.
And so it's important that we have the capital to experiment with models. It's important that we have entrepreneurs that are willing to be bold and sort of take risks and build interesting things. And I think that, especially after the caution of the last few years, it's important that we continue to have an optimistic look about how technology is going to change Africa and the world, and we continue to invest thoughtfully but aggressively in that space.
So speaking of technology, I want to talk a bit about how that aligns with technological innovation, AI. What's the new trend? What are we seeing from an investment perspective? AI is it's part of our DNA now, right?
It is.
So
it absolutely is
there anything that you're sort of interested in or observing or looking out for?
I think that it's affecting everything. It's affecting all the startups. And so most startups are looking to apply AI in a few different ways. So that internal efficiency, so work tools, like getting their own teams better. You're seeing it applied on data a lot. Most startups collect a ream of data but don't do very much with it. So can we use that data to inform better credit decisions? Can we use that data to improve our operations? And so that's what we call enterprise AI. It's just like, can we reduce the amount of stock we have to hold because we're better able to predict, we're able to predict when customers will need what based on their historical patterns. So there's a lot of just applying AI to existing businesses to improve outcomes. There are a lot of AI startups doing interesting things, and so whether it's making things available in African languages, data and information available in African languages, whether it's applying it to agriculture, predict rainfall, improve outcomes, so there's a lot of kind of different ways in which it's being applied. I think that it is critical enough, like you said, it's become sort of it's applying to everything. And so I think the best startups will be thinking about it thoughtfully, will be experimenting. I also think that we are very much in again, still, I think, early stage with that, where we don't have a full understanding of how all of this will play out. And so from a pure investment thesis perspective, I don't have a strong one about like what startups you should invest in, but I do think that any startups that are thoughtful and careful will be thinking about how to apply this to improve their outcomes.
So you said you don't have a suggestion, because I was going to ask you that.
Where should you be putting your money?
I was going to say, if you had $1 million to do some seed investing today, what sort of sector? And sector is a bit general, but there are subsectors there. What sort of type of innovation would you place a bet on, so to speak, based on what you see in the work you do?
When I see it, I think clean tech is a really important space to be investing in. I think fintech, as overexposed as it is, there's a lot of work still to be done in that space, and so we need infrastructure. There's still a lot of fintech infrastructure that needs to be built. So I'd still probably look into that space. Commerce has been really interesting. And so again, your Sabis, your Omni Retails, companies like that are doing a lot of interesting things. Like credit is still a really important space to figure out how to extend credit to Africans and get that money back. I think is still a really, really important space. I think health tech and edutech are really important spaces. The problem is we haven't yet figured out how to drive real returns out of those spaces on the continent.
Well, that's interesting, because we're seeing, at least on the more mature side of investing, private equity is doing quite a lot in those spaces.
Private equity is starting to come into some of those, but I don't know. I don't think we've had like the headline
Okay.
stories that make
Okay.
you think, you know what? Yes, this is
A major fantastic
this
exit
This is the
story.
model that tells you that this is where
Okay,
I
and,
like
and
yeah.
so with all these interesting opportunities, what is that singular underlining driver that's making these opportunities really attractive in Africa?
I think the key thing is if you're going to drive productivity on the continent, you have to apply technology.
Right.
And so we as a continent, I mean, we have a huge productivity gap to the rest of the world. And so how do you bridge that gap? And so I think that applying technology systematically, finding the right entrepreneurs, I think that we need to continue to drive people into technology. So people in traditional spaces with expertise, something I always say is really important is domain expertise.
Okay.
If you're going to build a health
And when
tech,
you say domain expertise,
so you
help
need
us
to be an
understand.
expert in your own space. So a lot of technology leaders tend to come from coding, developers.
Okay.
But there's a difference when you have a technology leader come from medicine to build a medical startup.
Yeah.
So they're applying technology.
It doesn't have to have coding skills or development
No,
skills.
you will need technical capability,
Yeah.
but you can hire technical capability. You can find a technical co-founder to come with you. But there is a thing when you really understand a problem. So you really understand this medical problem, and you can see how technology is going to solve that problem. I think that we need a lot more people moving out of sort of like the domains in which they are experts, whether it's education, whether it's agriculture, whether it's healthcare, and then going into tech.
That's actually reassuring
really,
because
really
a lot of
critical.
people feel like, oh, I'm an expert in energy, but I'm not a tech person. Why would I go and set up a tech startup? But actually, that domain expertise
You need to
is
match the two.
to
You
match
need,
the
you
two.
need that expertise about this space,
Yeah.
and then you need technical expertise. And I think there's technical expertise out there now.
Right.
You just need to match it. So I think that is a really important trend for the future. Is more people moving. In that
So tell
direction.
us, you're CEO of Big Cabal Media. You also do this Moonshot annual tech thing. So what's next on the horizon for Moonshot? And what
So
can
Moonshot is
people
Tech Cabal's
expect?
flagship conference. It happens in October every year. This is year 3. And when we named Moonshot, we basically had a vision that, look, again, Africa's technology is in a relatively early stage. We want to showcase the most exciting entrepreneurs, the most exciting startups. We want to put them to the most exciting investors, the most focused investors on the continent. It's year 3. This thing is growing in really exciting ways. Last year, we had 4,000 people attend over 2 days here in Lagos Eco Hotel. And this year, we expect probably about the same 4,000 to 5,000 people.
From around the world.
From around the world.
Okay.
So you have startups from all over Africa. Last year we had trade missions from maybe 9 to 12 different countries and from African countries as well as European countries. We have a much stronger presence of investors this year, probably over 250 to 300 investors will attend this
So
year.
are we going to be signing deals?
Yes,
at
we're going to be
Moonshot?
signing deals. We're going to be signing deals. So, like from now until the conference,
Okay.
we're talking about the most exciting startups on the continent. There's going to be deal rooms. There's going to be investors looking for exciting startups to put money into. We have LPs. LPs are the people who invest money into
funds.
So we're going to have strong LP presence from across the world. DFIs, AFC, IFC, companies like that, all sort of coming and looking for where can we put money in? We have early stage investors coming. So the Africa Business Angel Network, ABAN, is going to do their conference the same week as ours. So we're going to have their investors, over 100 investors from all over Africa, joining us for the conference.
Sure.
We have D4D, which is a European investor group. And so they have over 100 investors from Europe coming to join us at Moonshot. And so I think it's an exciting time to come and see who's doing really interesting work. Our programming is always very strong because we cover the ecosystem day in, day out. We understand what the most exciting issues are, what the most urgent issues are, and we're able to bring, again, some of the largest investors from across the continent, Partech, etc., will be present.
In everything you've said, we're talking about the private sector ecosystem. What are the regulators, the policymakers, what are they doing in this space? And the capital that's even flowing from domestic and international investors, is it being enabled by regulation or is it just happening in free fall? Are they coming to Moonshot? What conversation are you having with Bosun Tijani?
He, has very kindly been at the conference 2 years in a row.
Right.
So he was there our first year, he was here
what
last
is the
year,
tangible
and he will join this year.
outcome?
So this year, last year NITSDA joined us. And NITSDA is important, Nigerian Information Technology Development Agency. They came, they showcased some of the startups that they support. They got to engage with the ecosystem. This year, we expect the Federal Ministry of Innovation, Communications, and Digital Economy to also join in a much more robust presence. We've invited the Minister of Trade, we've invited the Minister of Arts and Culture to come and join us because we have a very strong creative economy track.
Sure.
And so last year, from an investment perspective, we brought investors, we brought the Ministry of Arts and Culture, and startup and sort of some of the biggest players in the creative economy together to talk about financing infrastructure in the creative economy. Again, the hope is that this year we will see more deals, and that we're going to be a lot more structured about announcing the deals that get signed this year, because I think that you need to show this is actually how much money that happened. But I will say that there's a lot of energy from the government in some of these spaces. I think from Ministry of Trade, you're seeing a lot of energy. So they've participated in previous years, and we hope to see them participate again this year. And I think what's critical is being able to, last year, Minister Bosun Tijani sat down in a sort of closed room session and let the ecosystem sort of okay, let's lay out our real issues. Where should you be putting your energy?
What would be your biggest ask now to the policy space, generally across the tech and the funding landscape for African startups?
So my first thing is actually, funny enough, is never to the people who, it's not even to the Ministry of Innovation or Tech or Science and Tech or anything like that. It's that you need a working economy.
Economy at the very basic.
At the very, very basic levels. I mean, I look at interest rates and I'm like, how is anybody supposed to build a business in this environment?
Well, inflation is down.
Inflation is down.
Month to month.
I mean, it's down. I'm excited about it. 22% is still.
The Naira seems to be.
It has stabilized. So yes, I think that they've been, and I mean, props to this administration. I think that as a basic economic landscape, it is a lot stronger than it was, say, 3 years ago. Still a lot of work to do. You still have to bring those interest rates down. You still have, because it's just hard for people to borrow. You need to see growth. The best startups will grow no matter the economy, but you need startups that don't have to pull out miracles in order to grow.
Yeah.
You need okay startups to thrive because the economy is growing and their customers have more money in their pockets. And so that's always my first ask. And I think the second one, just on a regulatory basis, is just, is that we invest in technology. We want the NSIA to join us. There's pools of capital there should be going into technology. But I think that,
Okay, I love the fact that you said the best startups grow despite the economy. It's a thing this thing we have in Nigeria about how we're so resilient.
Yes, but you don't
and
want
everything happens despite government. But let's hope more happens because of government as well.
Yes, fully aligned.
Yeah.
Fully aligned.
Great stuff. Thanks so much for joining us. Tomiwa Aladekomo, CEO of Big Cabal Media.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that's all we have time for in Business Week. This week, I'm Rolake Akinkugbe-Filani. Let's continue the conversation on X. Do have a lovely rest of the weekend.